Sheshi, this is a very worrying number that we've seen for the first quarter. 75,000 people in South Africa losing jobs at a time when we are starting to feel a little optimistic about the unemployment picture. Why the jobless, why the shedding of jobs?
Samantha, it is disappointing. I think one of the reasons why we have seen this increase in job losses is that historically what tends to happen is hiring will take place over the festive season in preparation for increased consumer spending. And once that period has ended, there is then a slowdown in job creation, and some of those people are released from their jobs. So actually what we've seen is partially a cyclical trend that we do observe. In terms of where we are, the unemployment rate exactly a year ago was 25%. We're at 25.2%, so we haven't really moved in terms of the rate. However, 304,000 jobs have been created over the last year if we compare to the first quarter of the previous year. So that, in a sense, is something positive, but I would agree that this is a cause for concern.
A cause for concern. So let's look at what government can do to address it. And in the papers, I'm sure you've seen this, you know, the talk around wages and the fact that unskilled wages are too high in South Africa. What's your view on that comment?
Well, I think I would have to at least agree in part. You know, if we think of the data that comes out internationally comparing South Africa to some of our other emerging economy counterparts, one of the areas where we tend to fare fairly poorly is in the labor market. So clearly there is issues around our labor market policies. We can become more competitive by having a more competitive wage arrangement, and I think there is value to that. But in addition to that, there's also an issue around skills. Because skills are also essential for people to be able to access the job market. In South Africa, those who are well-skilled actually are able to get decent jobs. Those who are not that well-skilled face a very different set of circumstances. So it's not just the wage issue, it's also a skills issue, and that speaks to our education system as a whole.
Nothing new, really. The same story as being played out all the time. And in terms of the productivity factor, because that is also a big issue when it comes to, I suppose, more the unskilled part of the labor force. Many anecdotally saying that when they're building models, financing models, they have to build in an inefficiency factor into their models because South African labor is just so unproductive. What can be done to address this?
Well, I think I would agree with you that it seems like we keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I think really as policymakers, probably the decisions that need to be made are pretty difficult, they're pretty hard. But I think there are also some interesting options on the table that are currently being considered. One of those is a wage subsidy for the youth, because if you look at the unemployment problem in South Africa, it is skewed very highly towards the youth, where in that segment unemployment is actually over 40%. And really we need to think of more targeted interventions. How can we incentivize business while we are upskilling these individuals to give them something that would make it meaningful for them to get the young workers into the labor market?
Effectively, how would this wage subsidy work in South Africa? Do you think that, yes, it's a nice plan on paper, but in terms of actually getting it off the ground, do you think that it would work?
I think it could work. I think, you know, with any subsidies, the case is that there could be some winners and there could be some losers. But the reality is we face a really serious problem in South Africa. The way it would work is that you could give a transfer to employers. That transfer would come off the fiscus. It would allow them to hire young workers at a subsidized rate, meaning that the fiscus is actually compensating them for taking on these lower skilled workers. And I think that given the level of the problem we have, if I can just say, for instance, in Spain, they're sitting at 24% unemployment. For them, that is a crisis beyond crisis, something they haven't experienced since the Eurozone was constituted. For us, that kind of unemployment rate is almost normal.
Exactly.
And I think, you know, it does mean that we need to start looking at some of these alternatives, stop talking and actually if we make some mistakes along the way, at least let's take some bold decisions.
Okay, I'm just going to hit pause on that because the market has closed here in South Africa. Just taking a look at that top 40 index, as you can see, the only stock on the top 40 that managed to escape the sell-off, Capital Shopping Centres, which closed up by 2.25%. Anglo-American down by 1.5%, BHP Billiton down by 1.3%, and at the close of trade, SAB Miller also moving into negative territory despite an encouraging update coming through from Miller's Quay over in the United States. That's the market picture right now. But as we say, coming back to this discussion, let's talk about the agricultural sector, because some encouraging numbers coming through from that, 26,000 jobs coming through for the Q1. What's taking place in agriculture in South Africa right now?
Look, I was also pleasantly surprised by the agricultural numbers. I think on the one hand, probably favorable weather conditions have allowed us to get more people employed into that sector. I would imagine that there are some policies that are taking place there that are also assisting, but I would still think that the agricultural sector is an area that is an untapped potential for this country, and we need to actually improve our ability to be a source of food, not just for South Africa, but beyond our borders into the region and even further.
In terms of employment, though, do you think it's has strong employment potential in South Africa?
I think there are definitely some good employment opportunities for the agricultural sector, because depending on how you develop the agricultural sector, it can be a very labor-intensive sector, and it can be a labor-intensive sector that doesn't necessarily need the most skilled people, and those are exactly the kind of individuals that are struggling to get jobs in South Africa. The challenge would be if it becomes a highly automated agricultural system, and I think that's where we need to find the balance. Yeah,
weighing that up, and that's where agriculture has been heading in recent years. Thank you very much for joining us today,
Thanks for having
Sheshi Kaniki, Senior Economist from MMI Holdings.